everybody. Greetings from Okinawa, Japan. See everybody starting to get on. Good morning to everybody that's getting on. Sergio's having a little trouble right now with his internet, so he'll be joining us shortly. Um, so we'll go ahead and get started with questions and things like that once Sergio gets on, and we'll be talking mainly about crab conservation here in Okinawa. And then obviously, if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in and we'll try to get to you when we can. Anything specific to Okinawa, hermit crabs, anything related to hermit crabs, of course, and specifically conservation. And Sergio can answer a lot of that stuff because that's his field for sure. Yes. Okay. So we'll go ahead and for those that don't know me, my name is Shawn Miller. I'm a wildlife photographer and naturalist, and I've been um, photographing these beautiful hermit crabs of Okinawa for since 2010, and that's when I first found my hermit crab adapting with trash. So it's been an obsession since that point, and it's everything. It's gone from projects from crabs with beach trash homes to carving for nature, make the switch for nature, which is the MTS 4N project. So all kinds of different crazy projects that have been going on as this thing moves forward. So yeah, please put in some questions if you have any questions. I could, while we're trying to get Sergio on, I'll answer those for you. Oh, thank you, Mary. Yes, I also do have a Patreon account. So if you'd like to support any of my work, Mary just posted it up here. Make the switch for nature, and this is where I get support for the actual project itself. And if you want to follow me on Instagram as well, it's the Make the Switch for Nature with the underscore. And I post daily reels of hermit crabs adapting with trash, as well as offering them shells, beach cleanups, and just everything that's going on here in Okinawa. Yeah. Thank you, Mary. So Katie asked, how many shells have I been able to switch over so far? So I have 173 pieces of plastic. So I've had where they've switched over from plastic to shells, but I've actually switched over many more than that with actual shells as well, shell to shell. And a lot of the shells that I find the hermit crabs adapting with are these old beat up turbines that have been passed down for 20, 30 years. And some of the most recent ones from last week, look at how old these turbine shells are. And they've just been used. They're all beat up. So when I do find hermit crabs adapting with old beat up shells, I'll offer them some new ones and place them around them. And then most of the time they will go into them. And then I'll keep these for education purposes. And if they're still good, obviously I leave them on the beach. But these are going to be good for kids programs and things like that. Great question. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, it's a lot. And this is the season right now. So this is the season when the hermit crabs are extremely active right now. There's a lot of roadkill going on, so they're crossing the roads to get down to the ocean and to mate, as well as the females are releasing their eggs as well. So there's a lot of activity. So I stay really busy during this time this year, and I get out, and this is when you'll see a lot of videos. The hermit crabs are just going wild right now. And I did get some footage, which I eventually will post on my Instagram account or Patreon account. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, it's a great season to stay busy. Yeah. What other questions do you have? Oh, okay. Kelly asked, can we see new trash since last year or most interesting trash as far as what their hermit crabs have adapted with? Yeah, I don't have my containers, but what I can show you is most of the stuff that they're adapting with, the more common ones, it's called the cassette gas tank plastic cap. It's on a for beach barbecues and stuff like that. Those portable gas barbecues, they'll have this is the cap for it. And people will leave them on the beach and they'll also float in from the ocean. But this is the most common one that you'll find people adapting with. Or, I'm sorry, not people, but hermit crabs adapting with. So I always find with this, and the interesting one too is this one. So a lot of the smaller hermit crabs will adapt with these, like the tawny hermit crabs. They will adapt with these, and this is the bottom of a chair. In public school systems, they have these chairs, and so they don't slide all over the floor. So this is really unique as well. These are the two most common ones that I find them adapting with. And here in Okinawa, we have 6 species of hermit crabs, including the coconut crab. So we have the blueberry, which is the most valuable, sought after one that they poach, as well as the concave hermit crab or passion fruit hermit crab. We have a tawny hermit crab, viola hermit crab, and the Indonesian, and then obviously the big coconut crab. So those are the ones. But I mainly photograph the tawny hermit crabs, concave, and the blueberry hermit crabs. All right, welcome back, Sergio. How's everything going?
Thank you. I moved sites, hoping this is
Okay,
better, but I don't know if you
okay.
can see me or hear
Oh,
me.
yep, yep. Yeah, everything's better now. Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, of
Thanks for
course.
showing up. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry it took me a little while.
yeah. Yeah, so thanks for joining Sergio. And Sergio, I first met Sergio in April, and
Yeah,
he came to Okinawa and organized a really great event, the conservation event at the Riku University, the hermit crab terrestrial uh, conservation event, and it was extremely successful. We met a lot of great people, and we talked about, if you could explain what we talked about, and all that stuff
yeah.
would be great. They would love to hear that stuff.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, and thanks. Very great to meet Sean again. Like he said, I was in
Yeah,
Okinawa a few months ago, and it was great. The workshop had basically two components, two different components. One that Sean was also part of, which was more in room. So we had some scientists talk about just taxonomy of hermit crabs in Okinawa, and we had within that some discussions with people working on human impacts on beaches. That was some of our colleagues over at Okinawa University, James Reimer to be specific, was talking about human impacts. And then we talked about specific issues to hermit crabs. Sean, of course, presented his work with plastic and the impacts on plastic. And we had a colleague from Taiwan, which I also know joined CrabCon before, talking about the impact of the illegal wildlife trade. And so that was one of the components of that workshop. And the second component, which was maybe everyone's favorite, was the one when we went to Sean and we did the actual monitoring of the hermit crabs, releasing or placing shells, empty shells, suitable shells back in nature. So we had that. And that was part of my work with the International Union for the Conservation of Species, which is conservation of nature, sorry, where we protect species and try to work on those threats, understand those threats, and then, of course, act on them to reduce them. And that was, in a nutshell, what we did.
thank you. Yeah, that was a really great time, and just for you to initially set that up and get it started,
Yeah,
so we could really focus on the big steps on ways that we can mitigate this and improve this and prevent poaching and wildlife trade. So it's really
yeah.
good start to get this thing going. So really appreciate that. And it was wonderful meeting you and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
it was
So
great.
it was good. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I really like meeting you and meeting all the guys. We were with Naruse Sensei, who is a taxonomist, and like I
Yes.
mentioned, James Reimer, who works on and Mary mentioned that human impacts on the beaches. There's many types of impact. Trade is a big one. Plastics is another, but there's other impacts. Habitat loss being the one that comes to mind.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. And Rebecca's asking, what is the general public's outlook on native crabs? So I guess I could take this one. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's the hermit crabs here in Okinawa is extremely abundant. So they're everywhere. There's literally millions of them, especially now during this season. So they're extremely common. Although they are a protected species and they are a national treasure of Japan, people don't necessarily see them as that. They see them as a common animal as well. So they really don't enforce the protection so much of them. Like there's a lot of poaching signs for fish and other animals at local sites and beaches, but they don't have anything with the hermit crabs. So I bring awareness to it from the American side on the military installations, and I'll put up signs to bring awareness to this. But there definitely needs to be more awareness and signage, even to the airports, at the airports, ferries, educating people on this, and that's just to bring awareness to prevent people from taking them. Right? Do you have any suggestions on that, Sergio?
No, that's absolutely correct. I think
Yeah.
people have one of the things I can add that is known in conservation is like a bit of a technical term, which is the tragedy of the common, which is a joke on the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of the commons is that there's some animals that happen by coincidence to live in places where we go very often, beaches being one of those. So humans love beaches in Okinawa and elsewhere, so we visit them frequently. And the hermit crabs just so happen to have some diurnal activity. They're very nocturnal as well, as many of you know, but people will see them during the day. So we overlap with them. And that we call it the tragedy of the common because an animal that we can perceive as common can decline by 50%, 60%, and we wouldn't notice because we assume it's so common. And the thing with beaches is that if you think about the island of Okinawa or most other places on Earth, beaches aren't really that wide. They're very narrow habitats, and they've been impacted by, of course, piers, industry, hotels, you name it. So habitat loss is a thing. So even though Sean is right, their numbers are great. We come across them very often. That's the only place they can live. I mean, that's it. That's their habitat. They need to go to the ocean and they need these conditions. So even though they can be perceived as common, that is an issue in conservation to try and change that misperception that even though common they are, they can still be declining a lot.
Great. Yes, thank you. That's a great suggestion. That's a great input that you gave us. What I've noticed too this year is since we have increased in poaching, a lot of the larger specimens are gone, it seems. They're harder to find. So poachers are taking larger specimens because they are more valuable and they are concentrating on the blueberry crab because that's the most valuable crab there is on the market right now. So yeah, I've
Yeah,
noticed that this year. Yeah, go ahead. I'm
there is
sorry.
a question by Jean Saunders, I want to say, asking if all the crabs of the different species have the same conservation needs. And that's not true. That's yeah. So the answer would be no. They don't have the same conservation needs. There are a substantial difference between marine crabs and
Mhm.
terrestrial. That's already a big one. And not saying they're least or more threatened, just different conservation needs and the way you protect their habitats. Terrestrial hermit crabs have threats related to the lack of shells, and that has to do to the reduction in the mollusks they need, and that's what Sean does, and he can talk more about that, how he replenish, let's say, these depleted stocks of shells that hermit crabs need. So that's one. Marine hermit crabs, as some of you know, and there was a talk, very interesting talk a couple of days ago on the history of the family tree, let's say, of hermit crabs. Some live in corals, so they do not live in shells. They need corals to live. And as many as you know, coral bleaching and other issues like ocean acidification, and even for the pet trade, people still do collect corals to adorn their aquariums. So anyway, there's threats to coral that are very unique. So no, crabs have very different needs, conservation needs depending on the species. Hermit crabs, terrestrial hermit crabs have an overarching threat, which is the pet trade. That's more prevalent in some species than others, but occurs a bit throughout the board on all terrestrial hermit crabs. And I think climate change is also a little bit across the board. Some species again more than others, but it impacts most of them. And the last one is habitat loss or habitat change. So for terrestrial hermit crabs, the loss of their beaches, their spawning grounds, all of that impacts most of those species to a great extent. So they're all largely impacted by it.
Great, thank you. Yes, as far as the shell, a big problem here in Okinawa is tourism has drastically increased, and many people visit the beautiful beaches here, and there's no regulations on taking the shells. So when people do see beautiful shells on the shoreline, of course they want to take one for a souvenir, and most of us are guilty, for not knowing until you're educated on that subject. Is these are homes for other animals, not only hermit crabs, but birds, sea urchins. They stabilize the sand, help with beach erosion. They do many different things, so they belong in nature. And we all want to take them. I'm guilty as well because I was a collector and now I've gone to conservation. So I'm bringing awareness to this and trying to get people to make better decisions where they, if they are a collector, make sure they're keeping some or giving back to nature or giving back to the animals itself. So they're not just taking and hoarding all the different shells because they definitely have a drastic input on the actual hermit crabs itself. And that's why a lot of them are forced to adapt with plastic, right? And it's a common thing. And so we get with organizations and kind people like you will send out donated shells, and I'll get shells from locals as well as restaurants and wherever we can get them. And then we'll make sure they're clean before we put them out, and then we'll get out and either I'll put them out or I'll get with organizations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, any youth events. Like this week I'll be working with Chudamura, which is a sea turtle conservation unit, and that's actually tomorrow we're going to go out and put some shells in the coastal forest for the hermit crabs. And what's so cool about the hermit crabs is they can smell these shells, if you didn't know that, and they will find them generally, like when we'll put them out, they'll be in them the next day or the following day after that. So they have a brilliant way of finding them. And they're going to adapt with something that's new that will protect them and something that blends in very well. Okay. um, One of the some of the favorite colors, of course, the hermit crabs like and prefer are these greens, right? The turban shells. They love these greens here, and it's easy for them to actually rotate the shell as well because it has ridges on it, right? It has these ridges on it. When you get some of the smoother shells, like these green turbans, sometimes it's hard for the hermit crab to grab onto these and spin them around, right? And what's unique also is when they spin this around, they uh, they spin it in a direction where sand will fall out, or no, or they can't actually add any sand, rocks, gravel to it as well. So that's pretty cool, the way that they actually do that. But they do what I found is the shells that I put out in the coastal forest, which is primarily green next to the sand. They generally will go for like the darker colors, the greens, and then the light browns as well, because they do definitely want to blend into their environment. All right, welcome back, Sergio. I was
Yes.
just
All
talking
right.
about
Yeah.
the different shells that they blend in, or that actual hermit crabs use in some of their favorite ones that they use here in Okinawa.
Yeah.
And yeah, so these are the ones that I actually carved the Make the Switch for Nature
Yeah.
project with, because I could carve them without putting any chemicals on them. But in Okinawa, this is the sazai, the green turban, silvermouth. This is one of the ones that they actually eat here. And a lot of the
Mm.
Okinawans will, after they eat them at a barbecue, they'll just leave them in their yards, put them in the flower plants, and or put them up on walls as decoration. So a lot of times I'll ask people to get them if they see them around, and then we'll just
Yeah.
repurpose them and put them back into the coastal forest, right?
Yeah, I was very lucky that I got to listen to you, even though my image was all messed up. I could hear your explanation,
Awesome.
and I wanted to mention that you just mentioned now the restaurants in
Mm,
in like Okinawa, but other small islands in the archipelago. We will see sometimes in the beach these little piles of shells. So I'm certain
yes.
it's like people who ate them, use them in their way, but then
Yeah.
also put them back, and we can see these little. I took some pictures and I sent them to Sean as
Yeah.
well and others. So
Yeah.
yeah, people
Yeah.
in
That.
Okinawa actually do better than some other places.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you're right. On a lot of the outer islands, they will do that after they eat the shellfish. They will bring them back and
Yeah.
place them there, and so I think that's a great practice. A great practice. But I've also heard of other restaurants where they will, they'll, after the person eats the food, they'll just throw them away because it's easier to do that. So that happens as well, right? So that's a
Yeah,
big problem too. Yeah.
I have here a question from Cara Garcia, and she was asking if there's many protected beaches where the crabs are left alone, or are they most of them public and shared with beachgoers? Are the poachers getting them from public areas? So the IUCN has a collaboration with protected areas. We call it the key biodiversity areas, and there's of course protection, but we must remember that protection is often there for, let's say, a reduction of poaching of sea turtle eggs, which means that there's people monitoring at night. That doesn't impact, for example, poaching at hermit crabs. And some beaches are protected for beachgoers, so they're protected in a sense for human use. Again, no protection for hermit crabs. So protection exists, but they do not always or never, I think, encompass hermit crabs specifically. And so far that I know, no park has been named as a sanctuary. That's what we kind of define as a place where a species is left alone actively, proactively, it's protected in some proactive way. So I don't think such exists in Okinawa, and I actually don't know of any in the world. There are sanctuaries for other species, including tarantulas, which is a group I work with as well. There's one sanctuary in India, but there's no sanctuary for hermit crabs. Everywhere they are, even if protected, they can and often are, as Sean knows, poached.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, I don't know of any beaches here in Okinawa that are protected for them either. Yep.
Yeah. There's another
Hmm.
question that I think is more for Sean, is why the blue crab the most popular?
Why is what? I'm sorry.
Why is the blue crab the
Oh,
most
okay,
popular?
the blueberry hermit crab. Well, it's a great question because it is definitely the most beautiful one, and you get these beautiful, vibrant, deep purples, and almost like these pinks and shades of wine color, and they're just so they because of the color of them, they are much more valuable, and that's why, yes,
Yeah.
more demand.
Yeah, there is some science on that. That a lot of the people who procure pets, at an average, blue
Mm,
is a very sought of. It's very rare in nature for
rare color,
many
yep.
biological reasons, and therefore many sought after. Like Sean described it, they're beautiful animals.
Yeah.
They're just remarkably colorful. They're also fairly large, or they can be fairly large
Mhm.
if allowed to grow. So all of that plays against them in this case. What makes them so remarkable as a species also makes them so appealing to have as a pet or a source of poaching. Um, Another question from Stacy May regard to shell availability. This is more for Sean actually. Is it because the
Mhm.
mollusks are overfished for the souvenir shell industry and or the food industry, or just a
Hmm.
reduction in mollusk population?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of it that I've seen living here over 25 years is it's over collected and lack of regulations on certain things, especially the turbans, which is actually the preferred shell that the actual hermit crabs use, especially the blueberry hermit crabs. But because of overfishing and because people are taking them and eating them, and then they're not returning them back to the ocean, not recycling them, then there's a lack of these, right? So, and with the increase in tourism, yes, people are overtaking shells, and that's a big problem as well because there are no laws saying that you can't physically take these shells. So people will take them, and people know that they are, used by hermit crabs, and they still see them as treasures, and so they'll take them. But I try to bring awareness, about the problem, and people know about it, so it's good. So we're making efforts, and people are inspired by the reels that I'm making on Instagram, and so they are giving back to nature as well. So I'm
Yeah.
making some progress on that. Yes.
Yeah. So all the points Stacey mentioned are possibilities, but like Sean said, the food industry. So for food is the main overfishing, or in this case, over bycatch. It is interesting that Japan had traditionally a very sustainable sort of fishing. I worked a little in the island of Amami, that's just north of Okinawa, also in the Ryukyu archipelago, and people there fished very little, like for their livelihood. So really, but a very small sustainable fishing, and they of course would put back the shells. Why wouldn't they? But with the advent of over tourism and the number of visitors, there's just more people to feed. There's just a large, there's
Mhm.
more demand. I'm sure some are exported as well, but even just considering the internal market, Japan has grown a lot. Some of these islands were very remote. I remember the island of Kakuroma, which was one of the few still yet small near Amami, and very few islands remain like that. Most of them have become, for very good reasons, very popular. They're very beautiful, and that brings, of course, more demand for these items. And just out of the, how would I say, practicalities of the modern world, this lack of connection with nature, people stopped returning the shells unless someone like Sean comes and reminds them of those forgotten practices. But traditionally, as I spoke to fishermen, they used to do it. That was
Mhm.
not because they thought about hermit crabs, it was just how
Mhm.
things were. You collect the shells, you eat them, you put them back the
Mhm.
same exact day. Now
Yeah.
people are just doing it in restaurants. They get busier. The restaurants are also a bit more inland. There's a
Mhm.
lot of little nuance that we're trying to fight. But yeah, so we hope that traditional practices might be returned. And Japan is quite good for that because Japanese people are often very prone and in tune to preserving tradition.
Mhm. Jean was asking, why is there a reluctance to protect hermit crabs? What are the roadblocks to passing and enforcing their protection? What do you think about that, Sergio?
Oh, there is a lot. So I can
Yeah,
begin with the
right.
point
Yeah.
that there's a lot, but I can begin with the part that I'm more guilty
Yeah.
of, that I have more responsibilities on, which is the
Yeah.
red listing. So
Yeah.
hermit crabs, the only hermit crab that is red listed under the IUCN is the
Mhm.
giant coconut crab.
Yep.
All the other ones are not yet. So that was part of my work or my efforts in Okinawa. is to change that. So to recognize that some species are more threatened than others, and which ones are more threatened, and where, which parts of the island, which parts of the region, or which parts of the world. Some of these species are live in multiple countries. Anyway, so that's one of my faults, is that we didn't have that data in a way that is easy to talk to politicians, and that's the other step. It's sometimes very challenging to raise awareness of a topic that people would rather, they have other issues, so they're busy with other things. So it must be someone like Shawn needs to exist, and some other people like myself and others to try, like yourselves here, to advocate for these things. It's very easy for hermit crabs and other smaller animals, smaller in size, to be neglected. They're clearly very important, but it's easy for them to be overlooked, or underlooked in this case, I guess.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, so in April and May, they had some tourists that came to Okinawa, specifically on Mamioshima and Miyako Island, and they were foreigners and tourists, and they specifically came to the island to poach, to take blueberry hermit crabs, and they literally had like 353 kilos, so over like 1,000 shells, close to 1,000 hermit crabs and shells, and they're obviously taking them to other countries like China, possibly Taiwan, Vietnam, and so on. But they're obviously selling them because they are extremely valuable in the pet trade right now. There is a boom of them, and they're only taking the blueberry hermit crabs. So hopefully there's more attention on the police, the Coast Guard, and hopefully to bring awareness to this problem. Right? It's hard. So.
Yeah. It was a question from Katie Grottendick, and the question was about turbo shells. So
Hmm.
it's a group that can be broader, but what we call the turbo shell is Turbo sazai. That's the Japanese species.
Hmm.
Sazai is their native name, but also their Latin, or scientific name. They are
Hmm.
unique to Japan, South Korea, and I believe Taiwan.
Hmm.
So they're not native to the U.S. Not this particular species. But as
Hmm.
Shawn has shown this and has shown me, the hermit crabs prefer these shells, which makes sense. They're the native shells to their environment, but they're not super picky. Clearly, they accept even plastic, and they will definitely take other shells, other mollusk shells that won't harm them as much, including invasive snails, which is very interesting. So yeah, so the turbo, the question was if they're native to the U.S. They're not. Only that region of Japan, South Korea, and maybe Taiwan,
Yeah.
and yeah, but other shells would be suitable as well.
Yeah, yeah, and so the ones that we have, like a lot of you use for your hermit crabs, is called the tapestry turban. They get them from a lot from the Philippines as well, and we do find them here in Okinawa. But this is obviously the most common one. And then we have the green turban, and this is a baby one or a juvenile one. You can see I carved on it, protect. But these are the ones that the hermit crabs here in Okinawa love as well. But yeah, there are different hermit crabs. I think there's a Mexican turban shell as well. But yeah, they love them all. They work really good based on the swirl, and it has the gription, the texture on the outside, so they could actually grab onto it and get into it pretty quick as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And another shell that they like, especially the big passion fruit hermit crabs, the concave hermit crab, they love these big conch shells. So you'll find these, and this is the edible mollusk as well in Okinawa, and they discard it on the beach sometimes, and then the hermit crabs will use it. Another shell that the hermit crabs use here in Okinawa is an invasive land snail from Africa, and these came here in the early 1900s as a food source, and they've taken over, so they're all over the island. But hermit crabs, being adaptive, they adapted with these. They use these to survive, and so they work out well. Yep. Yeah. And then we also have the invasive apple snail that we'll actually find in the rice field sometimes. And you'll see the hermit crabs adapting with these, but they're really thin and semi-fragile as well, but they're better than nothing. Now, the smaller hermit crabs, their favorite shell to use is going to be the nerite. So I find a lot of the babies, juveniles, adapting with nerites. They're strong, they're durable, they're reliable, they're lightweight. So this is what you're going to find them in the coastal forest adapting with a lot of the times. Okay, Sergio, are you back? You sound good.
Sorry, my sound was off. Yes,
Okay.
sorry, I had to
Oh, okay.
reconnect my battery. Always
Oh, okay.
technical
Okay.
issues.
Okay. Good to go. Mm, yeah. See what else we got here. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think Sergio is having a little trouble connecting right now. So yeah, if you have any other questions, please type them in the chat. There we go. Will hermit crabs take a shell from an actual snail? Yes, they will actually. If the snail is already semi, like if it's decaying, yes, they will actually feed on the snail. I've seen that happen before. They'll feed on the snail, and then they'll actually utilize that shell. Yes, eventually. Yep. Great question. Worm farmers? No, I'm not familiar. I'm sure there is. Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure on the worm farmers. Sorry.
Yes, I'm not sure as well.
Yeah.
Well, having said that, I have seen because we did monitor the illegal trade in shops, and we have
Hmm.
seen worms for sale. I don't know
Huh.
if they were
Okay.
wild caught, but
Yeah.
maybe they were produced in farms. I don't know. Like in the bait shops, I guess is the place we found them, if that makes sense. Because we
Okay.
know that some hermit crabs are also used as bait, and that's really the worst use, to be honest, because they will often take the shell, break it, destroying it, so unusable for any other hermit crab, and then kill the hermit crab to be used as bait. So they destroy not only the animal, they kill not only the animal, but they destroy the shell. So really
Mm,
unsustainable use of the animals.
yeah. Says, who are the poachers selling the crabs to? Do we know
Mm.
anything about the middleman? Nope. I do not. But we know that they are making their way over to China for a fact because we do have one of my make the switch for nature shells ended up in an auction in China, and somebody took a photo of it and sent it to me. So we know they are making their way there somehow. Yep.
Yeah, we have we have tried to follow the trade, and some colleagues in ours have detected some of the places, but yeah, we don't know the supply chain in that amount of detail yet.
Yeah.
We know they're collecting them, and maybe they are the ones selling them directly. I don't think so. I think they contact local people mostly to collect them, and then find a middleman, as you said. It may be a pet shop, maybe a supplier. It's unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. Jean asked, how do you encourage conservation in Okinawa? Well, the best way that I know through is what I'm trying to do is I just, through website with writing, with my photography, and encourage people not to take things. And I give conservation classes free a lot of places on the military installations and to groups, youth groups as well, summer camps, which I'll be doing tomorrow. And I just make them aware of the situation that they are protected species and to leave them alone. Don't touch them. We want to protect them for future generations and give back to nature. So that's how we're doing it here in Okinawa for from my side. Yes. Yep. Okay. And Kara asked, do people commonly keep hermit crabs as pets in Japan? Or yes, they do. Yeah, because I have followed some people on Instagram that do have them as pets. And if they are common wild animals and not kept as pets, if that has no effect on general population views. Yeah, so they're so popular here that people will go to the beach and they will collect them as pets. Yeah, and a lot of the kids, you'll see them walking around with containers full, and it's just one of the things that no one's really enforcing the protection of them in that sense because they are so abundant. It seems like, right? It's only when people are trying to poach them and they get caught when they're trying to send them to a different location and take them off of Okinawa or off of Japan. It seems like it's a huge problem. But that's a great question, Kara. Thank you. Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question about the blueberry hermit crabs, and I don't know. There are supposedly there are some people here in Okinawa that do have licenses to collect hermit crabs and export them, even though we don't know really who they are. So that's probably how they were acquired and how they made it their way to other places in the world. So yeah, would it be possible to have a legal captive breeding program in the United States? Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that. Do you ever get pushback while educating? Leave the shell. Yeah, of course. There's a lot of people that you could tell them, you see it all the time online in social media where if you tell somebody in a specific way, you shouldn't take anything, people are going to do what they want, right? And you can't force people by telling them this. You have to lead by example, right? And that's the best way you can do it. And you have to explain to them in a kind manner, like what's the reason why you shouldn't be taking them. And this is what people do a lot of times. They go beachcombing and it's really good for stress relief, and they pick up sea glass, and sometimes they pick up broken shells, but sometimes they do pick up a shell that would be suitable for a hermit crab, right? And we try to do our best, but people are going to do what they want, right? That's what they do. Yes. And okay, when you take trash, have you noticed more sinister shape deformations? Oh, what does that make? Oh, okay. Great question, Katie. No, it doesn't modify their bodies in any way. It's weird because their abdomen will sort of get smushed or shoved into the plastic, and somehow it fits in there, but it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't change anything. And I don't think they're living in the plastic for a long period of time either. So it doesn't modify them at all. No, 'cause as soon as I give them a shell, they go right into it without any problem. Yeah. And then Stacy was asking, can you explain the national monument status and how that does not mean that they are protected as people think? Yeah, they are a living national treasure of Japan. And that happened, I think, in 1971 or 72. And they are protected by the Okinawan government and of Japan. And I think they initially did that to prevent people from exporting them or, from poaching them and selling them, right? And but there are specifically a few people that do have licenses, which, like I said, we haven't seen or we don't know about that can do this. But that's really what I know, and it's like I try to contact people about it, but it's one of those gray areas where because they are not actually an endangered species, I think it's harder to enforce things with them. Yeah, great question, Ashley. Yeah, coral reefs are dying, and there are some marine hermit crabs that actually utilize the coral reefs. So they'll live inside in the tiny hole inside of the actual coral reef itself. So that's a good way where you can sort of tie the two together and bring conservation together and protect that specific species as well to bring awareness to the hermit crabs. Yeah, that's definitely a great question. Thank you. Mhm. Okay, and Sue asks, are there many Facebook or other groups of keepers in Japan? Yes, there are, and same thing. There's sellers you see as well on some of the auction sites, but I don't generally follow those people. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. Um, but I just stay focused on what I'm trying to achieve and not get involved in all the other stuff. Yeah, that's a great question, Stacy. When I contacted environmental, um, they said they can't give you the names. So, and that's but yeah, he said there's still people that have licenses, but no names, no names, no records. I guess I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, they Uh, Mia asks, is it common in Japan to see hermit crabs sold in bulk at beachside shops? No, they can't do that. I've never seen a hermit crab sold in a pet shop, a terrestrial hermit crab sold in a pet shop, or at a beachside shop. I have seen marine hermit crabs sold in pet shops, with the clownfish and the damselfish and all that. Mhm. I guess Sergio's having some trouble connecting. Oh, okay. Thanks, Ashley. I'll have to check out that video game. Another Crab's Treasure. That sounds pretty cool. Any other questions out there? Let's see. Okay, so this week I actually was carving 951. So I'm on carving 951. Make the switch for nature shells, which it's been about 4 years into this project, and we're gonna put 5 of them on the beach with the kids' names on them in the coastal forest. So later they could come back and hopefully see their shell. That would be awesome. Now I have some of the original ones I put 4 years ago are still doing good, and people always ask, is this carving going to make the shell weaker? And if the shell could last 5 years, that's awesome, right? But it's pretty durable. I'm going just a thin layer, and the good thing is I'm not using any chemicals. I'm just going down a little bit, a few millimeters down. So it works out really good. Yes, Vivian asked about, um, can you talk about any other volunteers you get to work in various conservation efforts? So people will come out. So anytime if I set up an event just on the Facebook page, hey, I'm going out to this beach. Would you like to join me and volunteer? And basically, they'll help. We'll first put shells in the coastal forest that we get from donations, and then we'll do a quick beach cleanup. So people enjoy doing that, making the place better, and things like that. So people are always willing to volunteer, and lots of kind people. Yes, and I do the same thing, and I'll be volunteer my effort tomorrow at the sea turtle conservation for a summer camp. Okay, and Stacy May asks, have you made any observations with regard to the feeding on native plant matter types of plants? Yeah, great question. So the hermit crabs here in Okinawa, they will eat, as you know, they're scavengers, so they pretty much eat everything. And what they will eat is, so they prefer the stuff, as soon as it washes ashore, there'll be roots, there'll be a plant that's decaying, fish, turtles, crabs, snakes, like you name it, they will eat it. But certain flowers, but there's really nothing that I think that they won't eat. You know what I mean? Like here in Okinawa. So yeah, but anything native, they will definitely feed on it. And yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But I see them eat, and that's what I'm planning to do, is actually take video footage of every time I see them feeding on something, that I'm going to actually record it and then compile all that together, and then I could have it as one big reel so people can see everything that they actually eat here in Okinawa, which will be great. But as you know, is when they're feeding, is if you approach them a lot of times they'll stop eating and then they'll flee the scene. So the hermit crabs in the wild, they to protect themselves, they flee, they freeze, or they fight, right? And so a lot of the times, if you're with big groups of people when you approach them, they definitely will, you know, flee or freeze, right? And so they take off most of the time, or they just hide in their shell and sit there, try to protect themselves. And then you got to wait for them to come out to get some footage. And Philip asked, do they offer hermit crabs as prize at fairs or carnivals like they do in the US? No, they do not. No, I've never seen hermit crabs here in Okinawa for sale or at any event at all because they are protected, considered protected, a national treasure of Japan. Yeah, I've never seen them. And one thing in the wild, the hermit crabs definitely prefer modified shells. And I'm sure for some of you that do have hermit crabs, you've seen how they're modified, extremely modified in the inside, like this one. And it's creates much more room. So a lot of the hermit crabs in the wild, they will walk down to the beach or they will find a puddle and they will actually drink water and add it to their shell. And it's almost like a straw where they're pulling it in, and then they keep the water in the shell and keep that moisture in there and all that good stuff. So it's very important for them to have shells that are modified as well, because they would much prefer. There's a lot of times where I'll offer them shells, and they're in a modified shell that's so comfortable for them, just like your favorite pair of jeans, right? Not too tight, but just right. And they'll do the same thing. Well, they'll switch over into a new shell, and it's just not as roomy or not as comfortable, and then they'll switch back into their actual old shell as well. So they definitely seem to prefer the modified shells because they are roomier inside. Do the hermit crabs ever go into trash dumpsters for a meal? That's a great question. I've never seen them go inside of them, but I have seen them around, like at the base of the outside trash bins. Yes, that's a great question. And sometimes people accidentally throw hermit crabs away during beach cleanups. And this has happened one time before where we had a marker cap, and during a beach cleanup, somebody grabbed a marker cap and threw it away. We were going through the plastic because a friend was she's an artist and she's looking for pieces of plastic after we got all the bags loaded up, and she found a hermit crab living in the actual cap. So that does happen as well sometimes. So it's important, even when you're doing beach cleanups, is to check the inside of caps for hermit crabs as well. Yeah. Great question. Have any crabs refused to switch out of trash? Yes, they have. And when it's breeding season, like now, all they're thinking about is breeding. That's it. They're thinking about that. They don't want another shell at the moment. So the males, from what I've seen, the males are the ones that generally will have the plastic because the females need to have, they need to have a shell where they could hold the eggs eventually and so on, right? Um, but I did finally get some footage 2 weeks ago of a male in a plastic cap like this mating with a female, which is pretty impressive, right? But when I do find hermit crabs during this season when it's mating and all they think about is mating, they don't want to bother with a shell. You could put shells all around them and they'll go right by them and they're looking for a female at that point. So yeah, it's a good question. There's other yeah. Great question, Kathy. Have you seen the crabs do the lineup shell exchange? Not like on BBC with those big, beautiful hermit crabs and those shells perfectly lined up. No, it's a different thing here. They sort of line up like the little ones, the juvenile ones. I'll see the big ones. I never see line up, But the juvenile ones, like this size and smaller, they sort of all get together and line up, but it's just big rows and scattered everywhere, and they're moving, and so it doesn't happen that in that sequence, that organized. No, it's all over the place. It's almost like popcorn going off. One goes off here, one comes around here, goes in. So yeah, it doesn't. It's not that beautiful line like you've seen on the BBC, and the shells aren't that beautiful either. Okay, great question, Stacy. How far inland from the ocean, high tide area, are the land hermit crabs seen? So miles up in the mountains, especially the concave hermit crab. They're generally more up in the mountains and up in the hills. And then when it is breeding season, they make their journey miles, kilometers down to the ocean. The blueberry hermit crabs will generally stay closer to the sea. And yeah, but they like since this is breeding season, I see a lot of them in the road that are crushed that are trying to make their journey. And I live approximately 3 kilometers from the ocean, and I see them sometimes in the road crossing the road to get down to the ocean from my place. So yeah, it's pretty common to see them up in residential areas at night, especially at night. They'll come and they'll start crossing the roads. So you got to watch out for them. Yeah, great question. Yeah, follow up. What is the temperature humidity range from the beach to those mountains? Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it seems like it's pretty humid all around, and the island is fairly small. I haven't checked any of that stuff, but it is like in the summer months, it's extremely humid here. It's hot, it's warm. We never get any snow here, but it does get windy, because we are on a small island, and especially in December, January, February. So this is like prime time in Okinawa, summer months, June, July, August, September. So if you ever visit Okinawa, those are great times to come out with the weather as well as hermit crab season. Because once in the wintertime, it seems like this after this mating season occurs, I think the hermit crabs sort of settle down because they're using so much energy. And from there, then I think they do their molting process as well. So you don't see so many of them after that. I'm not sure on that, but that's a possibility. Thank you. Correct. Concave is capvipitis. Yeah, they also call it the passion fruit hermit crab as well. But yeah, I'm sorry. I call them by their common names. So sorry. Yeah. But they get pretty big here. Okay, any other questions? Mm. Kathy asked, the people caught with the blueberry hermit crabs were confiscated. Were the people arrested? Yes, in the news it said they were arrested, and there is a fine. I don't know what it was, but supposedly the fines really aren't that expensive based on the amount of hermit crabs that they take and the amount that they could potentially sell them for. So that would be something that they could do to protect them and prevent people from taking them is to make the fees go up more per crab, right? So per each crab that is taken, make it make it a higher price, and then that will cause people hopefully prevent from taking them so much because they would have to pay more money or stay in jail. So, and it's like I said, it's always the blueberry hermit crab they take because that is the most valuable, sought after, most beautiful hermit crab that you're going to see. And they're here, they're pretty common, and if you know how to find them, uh, they're pretty easy to get a lot of them. These guys obviously know what they're doing because they're coming back with hundreds of them. So they're getting them early in the morning or late at the night when people are not watching them, and they're setting up forms of traps to get them. Yeah, great question, Stacy. What happened to the confiscated crabs? Well, hopefully they put them back. I would assume that they would put them back on the same beach that they were collected from, but I'm not sure with that. They never have follow-ups on that stuff when they announce it on the news. So, yeah, and last week I went out to a local beach at night, and it's amazing scene where you see the hermit crabs walk their way down from the coastal forest over this washed up, bleached coral, and then they go to a little cove, and from there, some of them are mating, and then some of them are actually going to the water, and the females are releasing their eggs, and it's nice, especially when it's a nice calm night, because you could actually see it and get video footage of it. But when it's really rough, some of these hermit crabs, they go in the water releasing, so they pulsate to release their eggs, and some of them get pulled into the water, they get tumbled, and eventually they make their way back. They get rolled back on. But when it's a really clear night, it's really beautiful to sit there and watch them, and they just keep coming in, and the females just pulse away, releasing hundreds of eggs as well. And a lot of people don't realize, like, even the juveniles will release eggs. So even a hermit crab living in a shell this size, a female, would release eggs as well. So I didn't know that until a few years ago, where I always assumed it was just, the big hermit crabs that were capable of mating and releasing eggs, right? But a lot of times I'd find, little hermit crabs in shells this size releasing eggs as well. They just don't release as many, right? So that's the importance of having these large hermit crabs, because they can produce more eggs, right? But it's a really beautiful thing to see if you ever get the chance. But I will definitely post some footage of that once I get to it. Yeah, yeah, it's a great question, Stacy. Nobody knows, right? But I'm sure if it's something that's large, I mean, something that's live, they're definitely. I would hope that they would put it back on the same location, right? Because what else could you do with 998 hermit crabs, right? So yeah, they're not gonna kill them, especially if they're a national treasure of Japan. Stacy, as hermit crab keepers, we need to be cognizant about on poaching. If you see blueberries on Facebook for sale, don't purchase them. Yeah, yeah, that's becoming a trend right now, right? A lot of sites, and yeah, I've even had people contact me about trying to sell hermit crabs, and they don't understand, like, why are you even asking me this? I'm working on protecting them, right? So I just don't even answer back to them. Oh, welcome back, Sergio. Can you hear me? You good? Yeah, I can see you. I don't think your microphone is off. Yeah, it's showing your microphone is off. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Carl. Thank you. Oh yeah. Thank you all. Yeah, it is. It's already 11 o'clock. That went by quick. Yeah, and thank you, Sergio, for your assistance as well, and thank you for showing up. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Moa. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Stacy. Yep. All right. Yes, long time ago. Yes, they do serve the sawzeye turbans, the snail, at restaurants, and people do eat them. Yes, but they don't serve hermit crabs. No. Thank you, Kathy. Sue, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. All right, Sergio. I think they're moving on to the next one. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, and have a great night. Great day. Sergio, your mic is still off.
Yeah, I turned it on a
Oh,
few
there it goes.
times. There you go. No,
Okay, yeah, yeah. There you go. There you
yeah.
go.
Thank you guys, and I hope to well I'll see Sean soon, I'm sure, but all the others as well. All the best from the Portuguese South here in the Algarve.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Arigatou gozaimasu, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bye.